Hey, welcome everybody to another edition. It's been a long time. It's been 6 weeks since I did a show, so I'm kind of rusty. So I apologize. But welcome to the EGlaze Chronicles. I am your host, EGlaze, and we're streaming live on the OTV Media Network. And happy Women's History Month. And I couldn't be happier to start off a great month like this with a dear friend of mine I've known for the last 4 to 5 years now. It's been going on a little while. She has been very instrumental in a lot of athletics in the city of Atlanta, from her days at Tech to being with the Atlanta Dream. And now she's also supporting different organizations within the Atlanta, as well as this new program, which we're going to talk about, Athletes to Leader, which is very, 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 very good program. I know a few people on there who helped, part of that program. So we're going to have a good time. Please help me in welcoming a good friend, Miss Theresa Wenzel. How are you, Theresa?
I'm doing great. Thank you.
Let's start with this. How are you doing right now? I know a lot of people say they haven't heard from you. Well, I get asked a lot, how's Theresa doing these days? And I'm like, she's doing better than all of us. But just letting people know how you're doing these days. You've been doing a lot of things. I know personally that you've been doing a lot of things, but just tell them how you've been doing and what you've been getting into these last few years.
Yeah, sure. So since leaving the Dream, I started my own company called OTE, Ordinary to Extraordinary LLC. It's a small business. It's a consulting business for small businesses, mainly in the sports space. And then recently I started A2L, which is Athletes to Leaders, a nonprofit focused on building the athlete from the inside out. I think anybody that knows me knows my passions. I like to leave people in places better than I found them. I've been very blessed throughout my life and my career, having great mentors and great leadership in and around me. COVID certainly has thrown a lot of people on their heels for different reasons. But I think everything that happens to you in life, it's not about what happens to you, it's about how you respond to it. So while certainly not anything that I would have wished on myself or anybody else, I've really tried to take something that for all intents and purposes has been a negative and turn it into a positive, and see how I individually can get better from it, as well as collectively help those that are in and around me, and those in the sports space.
Let me ask this about, continuing on. One of the big things is you've helped me as far as building, serving my organization, Optimize Vision. And you always talk about not being able to move forward and growing as thing goes forward and trying to build and all that. How do you handle, I don't want to say lessons, as we call it. We don't call them losses. We call them lessons, to continue moving forward, to continue to grow, and to continue to build. Because like you say, you like to leave things better than you left it, but you also like to see things grow as well, because you're a big hand and a big part of a lot of things that are growing in the city of Atlanta. What is that mindset that you have, that you like to be a part of those and help things grow? And how do you feel once you see those things grow?
Sure. Listen, I think anybody that's achieved anything in life has learned how to fail forward. And so it's the idea, failures, to your point, are lessons. None of us are perfect in any respectful manner with that. So as I've worked through my respective positions, and I've shared this publicly, at times I've left 2 jobs without having a job. And I generally leave for reasons of either I stop growing or philosophically I disagree with the management. But I think that with life, and I'm a very faithful person, so I always believe faith over fear. And there are people and things come in your life for a season, a reason, and a lifetime. And, there are very few things that stick around for a lifetime. So I take everything that I've been blessed to be part of and look at it as a very great learning experience, and try and reflect on the things that I've done well, and maybe some gaps that personally I've had. I always look at myself first before I look at other folks. But I really try and use it as a learning lesson, because we're never too old to learn a new trade, a new trick. And I think that right now, we have 5 generations in the workforce. And so with that is that we have to learn how to communicate differently. We have to learn how to teach differently. And at times we have to rebound differently. And so I think that, in a country that has dealt with a lot of adversity, Sports to me has taught me so much about my life that I look at that and say I've been, again, blessed in so many ways. But if everything went perfect, there would be no fun really in life.
I know that's right, because a lot of things don't go perfect sometimes. You talked about the pandemic and how did we get through it in sports, and we're still going through it. We haven't got through it. But what are some of the things that you were telling people as we were going through this? Because you do support programs and sports programs and other programs as well that had to deal with probably one of the most trying years in history, not just in our history, but in history in general. What were some of the things that, as a consultant, as a person that you dealt with adversity, what were some of the things that you were trying to tell people to not just get through it, but to get through it and also be prepared to be survive it and get ready for the next phase?
Yeah, so I think a couple things. One was put health and safety first, right? And I'm not from the medical field, so I have to rely on other people's perspective with that and the science. So is for folks that are leading within the sports spaces to know where your area of expertise is and to rely on the medical professionals to guide you elsewhere. From a business standpoint is that we all had to be nimble enough to understand that things that worked last year weren't necessarily going to work this year, and we had to really ready set expectations for the athletes and for the parents, and for anybody that we came in contact with. And it's one thing to teach kids new things they need to do, new routines, right? But wearing a mask and having to take temperatures and not having parents having access the way that maybe they had in the past, that's a lot harder on adults than it is on kids. Kids are, at least what I have observed, kids are generally more resilient, and they're more flexible. So, it was the idea, again, that none of us as human beings were perfectly imperfect. So we can't expect everybody to be 100%, especially when probably their livelihoods have been impacted, their children's learning schedules have been impacted. And so to me, it was manage and lead with a lot of grace and compassion, while also being strong enough to make decisions with the data that you have, which oftentimes, again, you're relying on other individuals to provide you. And as we all navigated COVID, there were so many unknowns with it that, what I recognized is there are a lot of people that were very good at pointing fingers, but not a lot of people that were good at making and improving decisions as they continue to go along. And so for the folks that I was working with, to me, that was the most important part, was to be nimble, but also be really clear with their communication out to whoever their customers were, so that there was no lack of clarity, but to also reinforce on a regular basis that the decision making today or this week may be different than it's going to be next week, because we don't know what's coming.
And that was a big thing. We were kind of, it was new to everybody. So we're just trying to get through it. I want to ask this because it is Women's History Month, and you being, I call you a pioneer, and I know you're very humble in what you've done, but when you're seeing the history and what women are doing in sports, not just in women's sports, but in sports in general, you being a big part, you being in the rooms of some men's and things like that, and having to make decisions for certain things. How do you feel that the women and the state of the woman in today's sports is today? I guess that's the best way I can say it. I think it's bigger than it has been. And we'll talk about Renee becoming an owner of the dream, a player owner, a former player owner. But what do you feel like today, women's, do they get the respect they should in sports? I see they're doing, I see female coaches, I see female GMs, I see so much. What are your thoughts about the state of women in sports today?
I think women are getting more respect. To say, are they getting the respect that they deserve? I think that we still have a long way to go as far as the marketing dollars that are put towards women's sports. I think that that's going to not only rely on the women to do some of the heavy lifting, but also with the guys, and to understand that your daughters don't necessarily want to see male athletes. They want to see strong women that are athletic, that don't have to make choices between being athletic and being beautiful. You can do both. We don't tell guys you can't do both. And so I think from a female standpoint, there's been a significant amount of improvement. But I think there's still good ways of work to do. But again, it's not just on the women to do that. It's also on the guys to be strong advocates, and especially guys with daughters, to understand that if you want it better for your daughter, you have to be part of the solution.
Couldn't have said it better myself. I think that's something, and I'm a girl dad myself with two daughters, so I always want them to be able to see progress, especially in those fields. But let me just talk about one. I've got a lady that I've become over the past few years a big fan of, and I just saw some great things she's done. Renee Montgomery, she retired from the WNBA a couple weeks ago. What are your thoughts about her now becoming part owner of the dream and seeing where she's come from where she played, going to UConn, going to WNBA, playing, and now she's an owner? Give me your thoughts about what Renee has been able to do over her career and now becoming an owner.
Yeah, I'm excited for Renee, and I think that that you are put in the places at the right time, right? And so I think Renee also very strategically made choices when she left Minnesota to come to play for the Atlanta Dream, and she had a home here, and so she knew that she had won championships both at UConn and in Minnesota. And she wanted something a little bit different for herself. And so I think that, as you look at change and managing change in your careers, is that Renee set herself up for success. And she was also nimble enough to follow her heart and her passion that, when COVID hit and with all the social issues that were going on within our country and still are going on, is that was a passion and a calling for her. And so she took the opportunity to step away from a very successful career to then take a step in another direction that only further enabled her. So I'm excited to see what she's going to do is in that position. I think that she's going to open the doors for a lot of young ladies coming forward, and it should be a great learning experience for her, but also for the city of Atlanta.
What yourself, Theresa, when you think about all the years that you've been involved in sports? I saw somewhere where you've been doing sports since you were 5. And now that where you've been, the rooms you've been in, the people you spoke with, how do you see, what's been your biggest, in your opinion, asset, your biggest contribution to not only sports, but to just society and women? Because you've done a lot. You got a nice little sheet of things that you've done, from the women, the people you've affected, the people, it's just amazing that I look at some of the people you affected, and you affecting people like me and things of that nature. But how do you look at do you ever stop and look sometimes and say, I'm doing all right? I know you still got big things you want to accomplish, but just overall, have you just sat back and looked and said, I've done some good things and I'm helping some good people? Because the litany of people who are always talking about I put this out and everybody say, tell Theresa I said hello. Everybody loves talking about Theresa, but have you thought about some of the lives you've affected and some of the people you affected over your time?
I can't say that I've spent a lot of time with that. I mean, I think that I'm always very grateful and very appreciative for the folks that took a chance on me and really gave me an opportunity, and then taught me about great leadership. And so from that, I always felt, and I still do feel, on a regular basis, that I have a responsibility to give it back and to pay it forward. And, as everybody, as I look at it, is the sense of the number of women that came before me that have done some really tremendous things. They had it really difficult. They made it a lot easier for myself and for the folks within my age group. And I think we all have a responsibility, regardless of age, gender, or race, to leave things and people better than we found it. And my basis of leadership is that of being a servant leader. So I don't necessarily reflect on that. I just continue to try and pay it back and pay it forward, and hope that it's people understand that we all can influence somebody. It's are we going to take the time to impact somebody's life in a positive way and make them feel important and respected, or are we going to do something to make them feel other than that? So again, I just feel very fortunate to have had the experiences that I've had, and I know I wouldn't be here if it wasn't for my family.
Can you expound on servant leader? What does that mean for you, and what does that term mean? I think a lot of people sometimes confuse. I'm getting to the point now, the older I get, that people confuse leaderships and leaders and bosses. I think some people think just because you can tell somebody to do something that's leader, that's to me, that's different. But talk about being a servant leader, and what does that really mean, and what does leadership mean to you?
Yeah, so, leadership to me, I think if you're a great leader, your organization should be able to flourish when you're not there, right? And people shouldn't be at a loss to understand what direction they need to go or what they need to do. You do want to be missed when you're gone, but you want that organization to be able to take it to another level because you really laid a really good foundation. When we talk about servant leadership, it's about putting your people before yourself. And unfortunately, in the world of sports, I've seen a lot of people in leadership roles, be it athletic directors or coaches, that maybe don't do it for the right reasons. There's so much money involved right now in college athletics that I think if we really look at it and said, hey, let's go back to the educational side of what sports is meant to be, the college student athlete may have a different experience. So to me, it's about putting your people first, and then also making sure that regardless if you're there or not, they not only know how to survive, but they know how to thrive.
Yeah, you got me thinking now. That's a great way of putting it. I just never thought of it like that. When people ask you, men, women, young, old, and they ask you for advice, what's some of the best advice that you have? Let's do it this way. What's some of the best advice you've been given? And what's some of the best advice do you give to people who ask for it?
Yeah, so some of the best advice I received, I think, was build bridges before you need to cross them, right? And so it's the idea of oftentimes we wait until we need something to reach out to someone. And relationships are key within any organization that you work on, whether it's family, whether it's business, is that if you don't have trusting relationships, you can't have success. And then the other piece I would say is make sure that you bring your genuine self to work, and also make sure that you're not just working when the lights are on, when people are watching you, but really, that it's that old saying that champions are built when no one's looking. Is I observe a lot of people, and I've seen some of the good, the bad, and the not so good. But I also have seen people work behind the scenes that they haven't gotten any credit, but they still come and work their tails off. And so I think that it's important to recognize that regardless of what position somebody holds, they're of value to your organization, and you should always recognize that. So the relationship piece is key, the work ethic is key, and then the building relationships while also treating people with compassion and respect.
Wow, awesome advice. That's awesome. I talk with Theresa. Full disclosure, when me and Theresa talk, I kind of sit back and I take mental notes so I can make sure I remember when we talk later on. But let's talk about athletes to leaders. Why did you decide to go ahead and work to help build this organization? And what's the purpose, and what are you hoping to achieve with athletes to leaders?
Sure. So I built it, or built it with a few other folks that are very important to me, because we saw there was a need for it, right? Is that the inherent lessons that we probably all learned for our age group growing up from athletics aren't necessarily being taught to the same degree because youth sports is so commercialized right now. Likewise, college sports is so commercialized right now. And while we have the best physical athletes that I've seen in my 51 years, they're not as strong emotionally, mentally, from a resilience standpoint. And the stat with pro athletes, as far as going bankrupt 3 to 5 years out, I think it's sad and ridiculous. And so to me, it's a gap that needs to be filled. I think if we can teach younger, then we can have better opportunities. And I think that, while certainly we've seen a lot about mental health, is that we're not teaching our kids to be as resilient as probably we were taught, or to be as strong with adversity. And so, again, the goal is to leave people in places better than we found it. But the focus for A2L is on the age group 15 to 30. And so that we can help them through that change journey of life. And we all go through it, right? Is the sense of when you transition from playing a sport, and I don't care if you're a one sport athlete, if you transition from high school to college to pro, or pro out, is that life is full of transitions. And again, we're not always prepared for them. So I think the athlete to leader piece is that across the country, we've seen a lot of athletes take a strong leadership role, and we've also seen folks say, hey, stay in your lane. And that, to me, I think needs to stop, because there are a lot of very talented athletes that, while they may be very talented on whatever core surface they play, they're even stronger as leaders and as individuals. And I just look at it as a great opportunity to do that and really develop the whole person and not just the physical side of the person.
Do you feel like athletics, you know, as great as it is, and with so much money into, I see danger in that, and I think you kind of expressed a little bit, if we don't get our athletes to understand what they can do. But did you get hope, you know, from last year, seeing so many athletes step up to the podium with these social issues and seeing them take on different issues and things of that nature? I know it gave me hope, but what are your thoughts when you saw these athletes go out and say, look, we are athletes, but we want to use our mics for difference? And we saw a lot of great things come out of it. What are your thoughts about athletes? And I think you just mentioned a little bit with Athletes to Leaders, not just sitting and playing the game and making money, but also affecting the communities they're a part of as well.
Yeah, I think, I mean, first of all, athletics and sports has a way of uniting people, right? But anything that grows too large with too much money you're going to see a diminishing rate of return on that. That said, is that from an athlete standpoint, I think you have more athletes that have stronger conviction than I've ever seen, and understand that they have a platform to be utilized, not only when they're playing, but even when they're not. And to recognize that, first and foremost, whether you're an athlete, you're a corporate person, you're a teacher, is that we're people first. And at the end of the day, if as people, we can respect and have compassion for one another and not judge a book by the cover, but rather understand what lies inside, we generally can have a much greater impact. So yeah, I tell people this: I'm an idealist who's a realist, who's the eternal optimist. So I see a ton of hope. I think that if, you know, we're going to learn that we've seen between COVID and the number of natural disasters that we've had across this country, if you don't get what your priorities are coming through this, I'm not sure you're ever going to get them.
And I think that's well said. I think that that's some of the things that I look at. What keeps a lot of us going is because we do see athletes out there, I don't want to say putting their neck out there, but not afraid to speak. I think back in the day, we did see athletes had to make the decision between the job or the check or being able to support those communities. But glad we're seeing a change with that. But let me ask, what's next steps for Theresa? You know what, you have so much going on, but what are some of the things that you're looking and hoping to do in the future with the Athletes to Leader and the program that you support and things of that nature?
Yeah, so for Athletes to Leaders, I mean, it's really rolling that out in a strong way. We're finishing up some pilot programs right now, which should be done by the end of March, and then working on the marketing to get that out so that we can get it rolled out in a very strategic way that not only can impact those that get it, but also can grow and scale to a rate that we can get it across the country pretty swiftly, so that we can help a lot of young folks. And that's something that's just, you know, again, it's a little bit of a passion project, because I see the need for it. I see the number of kids that are in sports. I mean, it's the most we've ever seen. But I also see where the gaps are. So that professionally, I think, is it. I've been fortunate and have learned how to deprogram myself a little bit. You know, college sports is pretty intense, and so is pro sports. But I really have been intentional with trying to take this time to enjoy each day that I've been presented with. And then really, you know, once COVID gets over, is to be able to spend some more time with my family and traveling, who are primarily in Buffalo. But I'm fortunate that my niece is here, spending a little time and having some fun with me here in Atlanta as well.
Well, we're thank you that you're down here in Atlanta and supporting us. You know, like I said, you are a mentor for me and the things that you do in the country. Where can people, if they want to find out more about you or your program, Athletes to Leader, where can they go and just put a little bit out there? I know you're not a big social media person, but you got one or two places where you're at. But where would you tell people to go if they want to learn more about Athletes to Leader, want to follow Theresa? Where can they find you at?
Sure, you can go to our website, athletesleaders.org, and you can go to A2L. We're on Twitter and Instagram. For me, I think mine is just T Wenzel. I'm not even sure what it is. But I'm only on Twitter. Well, no, I'm on Twitter and Instagram, but Athletes Leaders on both Twitter, Instagram, and then also LinkedIn. So generally, those are the three basic platforms for both the organization and myself.
Well, I want to thank you, Theresa. Thank you for joining me. I told you it would only be like 20 to 30 minutes. We were 25, so we did pretty good. Please follow her. I think she's one of the most intelligent people I know. I think Athletes to Leaders is a great program. Like I said, I know a few people that's a part of it. Just follow Theresa. T Wenzel is TWins14. I think that's her Twitter. I think I know it better than she does. So make sure you follow her. And anything else you want to leave with before we go out there, Theresa?
The only thing I would say is, for everybody is make 2021 all that you want it to be. And, no excuses. We're all dealing with the same things. And, we each have a unique opportunity. You get 24 hours at a time. Make it the most that you can.
And there it is. I can't add anything else to it. Thank you, everybody, for joining us. And remember, as I always say, Theresa Wenzel for EGlaze. Remember to continue to do your best. And you can only live 24 hours at a time. Remember to optimize your vision. Thank you, everybody. Have a great day. We'll see you later.